So just a heads up, I'm gonna just keep video on for now. Why the hell
Yeah,
not?
it's fine.
And
Whatever.
if you hear me start to either break up or sound like a robot because of my mic, just jump right in and cut me off. Because
Okay.
if you type it in the chat, sometimes I might not be
Yeah,
able to see it
no,
right
yeah, that's
away. So
fine.
just cut me off. It's fine.
Okay.
All right, let's
I mean,
just.
it's last time it was fine because I'm down in my room until Pete came in and then it started happening. I don't know why. It's just whenever Pete's in here, for some reason I get robot-y, but I haven't had
That's
that
fine.
yet.
It's all right. Yeah, I mean, I get it with me too. All right. We're live. We're kicking off, and we're looking at the Week 4 quarterback. Nope, not Week 4 quarterback, running backs. We're looking at the wide receivers and tight ends tonight. Let's see. We unfortunately can't talk about Larry Donnell, who's caught 3 touchdowns already and is absolutely going bonkers tonight, or Niles Paul, who's unfortunately injured and looking like he may be out for a little while. But let's talk about guys who are available to us in our Sunday and Monday leagues. First value pick tight end that I want to talk about tonight, Austin Seferian-Jenkins, going for $3,000 on DraftKings and $4,800 on FanDuel. So one of the cheapest of the cheap. He is a guy, stands 6'7", huge target. Didn't really get a lot of looks in these past couple of weeks because Jeff Tedford was out. He finally comes back as the offensive coordinator of the Bucs, going up against the Steelers defense that likes to give up points to the tight end. I think Glennon will be more apt to use Seferian-Jenkins, especially with the Vincent Jackson hand injury. Alex, do you agree with me there? Do you think Glennon actually will be forced to use Seferian-Jenkins, and at the same time opening up the playbook? Do you think Tedford will actually be able to use Seferian-Jenkins, say, down the seam at some point?
Yeah, I think he was able to do that a lot last year when Tim Wright was paired up with Mike Glennon. I think Mike Glennon has a little bit more of an affinity towards the tight end. We saw last year when McCann was with the Bears, he didn't really focus on Martellus Bennett as much as Jay Cutler did. He's one of those guys that just likes throwing to his trees, and Mike Evans and Vincent Jackson, and last year it was Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey. Glennon, I think, will get his tight ends more involved, and we've obviously been waiting for the breakout for Austin Seferian-Jenkins this year, and I think this is – I don't know if this is the week that I would play him, but we're gonna see a growth come from this week, and he's actually going to be targeted a little bit more than he has been.
Absolutely. I think if there's a week if I could bet on it, I think he actually gets into the end zone this week for the first time all year. I think this is the start of him really starting to ramp it up. I think this is like the trough, right? He's hit the bottom. He's ready to start ramping up. I think it's his week this week. And at 3,000 in DraftKings, I mean, we talk about it all the time. If you've gone heavy at other positions and you just need somebody to get you points, he's sitting there at the lowest possible value. So, go out and grab him if you have to. Looking at someone that's more experienced, he's coming back off of an injury, says he's feeling really good. Vernon Davis up against the Eagles this week. He's sitting back. He's more of a value on DraftKings. He's going for $4,500 versus $6,200 on FanDuel. Alex, tell me, do you think? I mean, I think he's a value, right? Going up against Philly, another defense that's relatively weak against the tight end. What do you expect out of Davis this week now that he's back and healthy?
If he plays at that price, you have to put him in your lineup. There's no questions asked about that. He's proved over the past 2 seasons that he is Kaepernick's favorite target when on the field. Even when Crabtree's in, he still gets the ball to Vernon Davis. I know week 1, everybody thought, oh, Crabtree's back. Vernon Davis is going to touch the ball. And then what did he do? He scored 2 touchdowns in the first half. Vernon is still a top 5 tight end in the league. He's might be the most athletic tight end that there is in the league. He's a guy that if you have him at 45,000 on DraftKings, where Jimmy Graham is going for at least 3,000 more, it's a great value. It'll let you save on other things, as well as having a superstar in your lineup at tight end.
Exactly, and he'll get those targets, like we said. When he's healthy, Kaepernick does not hesitate to go to his tight end, and he can line up in the slot. He can line up on the line. he's versatile, more versatile than some other tight ends in the league. And again, like you said, at that price in DraftKings, he's one of those you have to play him. He's your starter. Tight end one at that price, you don't see it very often.
He's just one of those players that I like plugging into my lineups, but as it gets closer to like 12:30 or almost 1 o'clock before the lineups lock, especially in DraftKings, you can change it up until their actual game starts. Just have a backup plan in place where if somebody's not playing, you can be like, oh, let me switch these two people out just in case Vernon's not playing, and you're ready to go if something happens with Vernon on game day.
There you go. Or switch him out for any of the guys that we're mentioning right now. Next guy is Heath Miller, so he's the counterpart to Safarian Jenkins this week. He's going up against Tampa Bay, who we've seen them get beat repeatedly in very bad fashion. Going for $3,900 on DraftKings, $4,900 on FanDuel, so he's a pretty good value in both. He's kind of been, I call him, a little bit of Ben's safety blanket the past couple years. Tell me, Alex, do you think he's the same thing this week?
Sorry, you cut out.
Where did I cut out?
Right as you started talking about Heath Miller.
Okay. So, looking at Heath Miller, moving on to Heath Miller, he's going up against the Bucks this week. $3,900 in DraftKings, $4,900 in FanDuel. I kind of see him as Ben's security blanket. Alex, tell me, do you think he gets, he thrives on the touchdown really? So when you're playing Heath Miller, you're not playing him for PPR points. So do you think he can get into the end zone against this Tampa defense that can't stop a cold right now?
I think he obviously has a chance, but the issue is that Roethlisberger hasn't really looked at him in the red zone this year. I think we were expecting that, considering that all of his wide receivers are short. They're either 6'1" or smaller. Antonio Brown's little, Marcus Wheaton's little, Lance Moore is little. But, other than Darius Hayward-Bay, but Darius Hayward-Bay is who he is at this point.
Darius Hayward-Bay.
I think that they're more of a team that likes to run the ball inside, and if they're going to throw it, they're going to throw it on some sort of corner route to Wheaton or Brown, or they're just going to do a little shovel pass to Le'Veon or Blunt. I don't really trust Heath Miller, and if his price was lower, like the bare minimum, I wouldn't have an issue starting him. But at that price, you kind of have to have him get a touchdown, and I just don't see the opportunities coming through, even though it is a great matchup for him.
Okay, and just to clarify, we're not every person we cover in these podcasts. We're not covering and telling you to play them. We're trying to evaluate the value in their price. And make recommendations off that value. So here's a guy, as we both said, relies on the touchdown for his points. And in a PPR, a full PPR for DraftKings, half-point PPR for FanDuel, you really want someone who's going to get more targets than 5 or 6 a game. So we'll move on to someone who's gotten those targets, taken advantage of them this year. Zach Ertz going up against the 49ers. Normally, you don't think of the 49ers as a team that's going to struggle against the tight end, but with so many absences at linebacker, I think, Alex, that's why you like him this week. He's going for $4,000 in DraftKings, $5,600 in FanDuel. Tell me, was I right? You think with those injuries that they've been dealing with all season, is that and the absence of Aldon Smith due to suspension, is that why you like Zach Ertz this week?
I just like Zach Ertz in general. I know that on previous podcasts, when we talk about tight ends, I'm always the one to make sure to mention Ertz. He's a freak of nature. He can catch anything. Even when Foles doesn't hit him correctly, he still somehow makes catches. For $4,000, he's in the same mold of Vernon Davis. If his price is anywhere below $6,000, I'm putting him in my lineup no matter what. In that offense, with the amount of red zone looks that he gets, like Davis does, he's just too freakishly athletic to ignore. And when you're at 4,000, I played him at 5,200 last week, and he didn't do as well. But that's value for this week because he went down so much. I can see him going for 80 yards and a score easy with upside for way more, especially with that beat-up linebacker core.
Yeah, we mentioned DraftKings likes to overcorrect, and I think this is another. If listeners go back to the quarterback running back uh, podcast earlier this week, DraftKings severely overcorrected on a couple of guys, and I think Ertz is one of those guys where they just, they're primarily looking at most recent production, your production in the most recent game, and at 4,000, I mean that's an insane value for Zach Ertz. Like you said, getting maybe not red zone, but that maroon zone target where he gets, a 20 plus yard gain out of the pass. I mean, he's getting several of those a game. You're getting good chunks of yardage. You're getting a pass, a point for the reception. It's great value. But really quick before we move on to the next guy, you mentioned Davis and Ertz. They're kind of in the same class. If they're the same price, who would you prefer this week?
Ertz. I just love Ertz more. Vernon sometimes scares me. He's one of those guys that I think I mentioned a couple weeks ago with Harvin. He could get hurt on the first play. He could do something to his hamstring, and he's just something that, especially when his price is more inflated, he's somebody that I don't trust to play all the time. Whereas Ertz, I've never seen him take off down on his own accord. It's more of, this is the scheme, we're taking you out for a play. Whereas Vernon, I've seen him get hurt multiple times. It's just, I feel like Ertz is safer, and that offense is more explosive, so that I would rather take Ertz to have a big day versus Davis. Davis needs to be the number one target in that offense on a given day to have a huge day, where Ertz, he could be the second or third option, and he can still top 100 yards and score a touchdown or two.
And I think you also want to take a look at the quarterback play there as well, right? So Kaepernick not throwing the ball as much as Foles, so Ertz is inevitably going to have more targets there as well. So I like your analysis and the fact that, Ertz is that $500 cheaper or $600 cheaper depending on which league you're playing in. You can't go wrong with him this week. Moving on to our final tight end of the night, we've got Dwayne Allen facing the Titans. He's going for $3,500 in DraftKings, $5,300, in FanDuel. I think Dwayne Allen is incredibly undervalued because he's kind of looked at as like the tight end 2 out there. Coby Fleener gets a lot of the publicity. Coby Fleener gets, he's the sexy pick, it seems, the past couple of preseasons. And then Dwayne Allen is the one that actually does the production. Going up against the Titans, it's a surprisingly favorable matchup. Tell me what you think about that, Alex. Do you like Dwayne Allen this week?
I definitely like Dwayne Allen more than Coby Fleener. I just don't understand why people still think that Coby Fleener is better than Dwayne Allen. I think it's just because of the fact that he missed all of last year. Before he got injured, I know I wrote about this early on. I think I did it in my preseason watch list. I was talking about Allen over Fleener. Allen is more athletic. He's a better pass catcher. Coby Fleener is more of a inline blocking tight end who gets open and just gets targets because Luck has places to throw the ball, and he just happens to be open, and that's the kind of quarterback Luck is on occasion, where he's just finding the open guy. But I feel like he zeroes in a lot more on Dwayne Allen, and I know they had almost exactly the same stat line last week. Fleener had the 7 targets for 4 catches, and I think it was 49 yards, and Dwayne Allen had 6 targets for 4 yards and 41 yards, and they both scored a touchdown. I trust Dwayne Allen in the red zone more. I trust him more as a receiving threat. It's a good play, especially at this price, because I know we talked previous weeks when his price was closer to 5,000. I wouldn't play him just because of the inconsistencies in who gets the targets at tight end. But at that cheap a price for him to probably get in the end zone, I would much rather play him over Heath Miller, and they're around the same price.
Good point. Yep, I like it. So that's our tight end value picks for the night. We're looking at Austin Seferian-Jenkins of the Bucks, Vernon Davis of the Niners, Heath Miller of the Steelers, Zach Ertz of the Eagles, Dwayne Allen of the Colts. The only one of our picks that we would highly recommend against is Heath Miller, but you've got some really good value in all of those other guys, including the boomer bust pick with Seferian-Jenkins this week. Moving on to our wide receivers. First guy up, he's our most expensive, so we'll get him out of the way. Alshon Jeffrey going up against the Packers this week. He's going for 6,600 in DraftKings, 7,600 in FanDuel. Alex, we had a little bit of a talk before this in that, he's pretty expensive compared to a lot of the guys we talk about as value picks. So tell me why you like him so much, as why you see value with him, at such a high price.
I think there's value there, partially because we don't know what the status of Brandon Marshall is. If he's limited or he even misses a game, he is the wide receiver one in a passing offense that throws the ball a lot. And when Marshall was limited last week, Alshon looked great. And the reason his price is so low is because of that hamstring injury that took him out of week 1 and kept him very limited in week 2. This is still a guy that was drafted in probably the top 3 rounds of your standard drafts or PPR drafts, doesn't matter. He's a very, very good wide receiver. He's going to get his catches. Even if Marshall's on the field, he's going to get his catches. And for you to have a guy that cheap that is basically a wide receiver one, that kind of territory, especially in regular fantasy leagues, that's a great value for somebody that could go for over 100 yards and a touchdown easily with 8 or more catches. If Marshall misses time, misses this game or is extremely limited, I don't have a problem envisioning 10 catches, 140 yards, and maybe 2 scores. I know it's a little ridiculous. It's a little outlandish.
I think that's a bit much.
But without Marshall, he's gonna get the targets. And we saw even when Jeffrey was limited, and so was Marshall. Marshall had 3 touchdowns in that one game. If Marshall's out, it's gonna be Bennett and Jeffrey sharing the touchdown.
I may be a Packers homer, but their secondary is much improved this year. So that stat line I think is a bit out there, but I do agree that if Marshall's out, Alshon is a great play at these prices, because you're absolutely right. Going into an offense that's going to throw the ball, a quarterback that's going to chuck it up to a big wide receiver, regardless of the number of defenders around him, I think he is a great play. You're absolutely right in that sense. Moving on to some guys that are definitely cheaper. Again, looking at these guys, they're going to provide you value at that price. We're going to look at the wide receivers for the Titans playing against the Colts this week. We've got Justin Hunter coming in at 3,800 on DraftKings, 5,300 on FanDuel. Nate Washington coming in at 3,000 on DraftKings, 4,900 on FanDuel. So similar prices, not too far off. And I think that's because they're really similar receivers, right? And not in their playing style. Hunter is more of a touchdown reliant guy. Nate Washington may get more targets, but at the end of the day, somehow they usually end up with similar points. Alex, this is in my opinion, a pure matchup play. Are you agreeing with me on that?
Yeah, I agree. My only issue with this is at the end of the game, they were saying that Locker was having trouble gripping the football, which is going to really limit him throwing the ball. And their wide receiver one, even though he doesn't line up as a wide receiver one, Kendall Wright isn't really seeing that many targets, which means Justin Hunter and Nate Washington really aren't seeing as many targets either. If Locker's healthy and he can grip a football, it makes these plays much better because they're cheap and they have a chance to score some points against the Colts defense that does give up a lot of yards through the air. But if Locker can't grip a football, I don't want to touch either of these guys.
I think that goes without saying. So definitely somebody you wanna take a look at as you're watching Sunday morning, making sure that your starters are healthy. So I can see that, right? Obviously, if the quarterback's not 100%, it's going to hurt the receiver statuses. But at those prices, again, if you're looking for somebody to fill that flex spot on DraftKings and you only have the minimum amount, Nate Washington's sitting there. He's looking like a decent value this week against the team. I'm expecting another high-scoring game coming out of that matchup this week. Moving on, we've got Anquan Boldin. So we mentioned Vernon Davis earlier. Anquan Boldin, receiver for the Niners, 5,000 on DraftKings, 6,100 on FanDuel. I think we can say pretty much the exact same thing that we did for Davis can apply to Bolden, right? He lines up in the slot. He's a powerful guy. Kaepernick does not hesitate to target him, even when, like you said, even when Crabtree's in the lineup. Tell me again, with another potentially high-scoring game here. What do you think about Bolden this week?
I like Bolden. He lines up in the slot, which means occasionally a linebacker will try to mismatch up on him, and Kaepernick is going to take advantage of those mismatches without Kendricks in the lineup for Philly. Like you said, I really see this game being very high scoring because right now the 49ers can't stop anything either, and Philly's going to score. And without Kendricks in that lineup, the Eagles are going to give up points too. So I could see this being a shootout. It's going to be one of those games where there's going to be a lot of passes thrown in the second half, a lot of fantasy points to be had in that second half. And Bolden has shown that, especially in DraftKings, because he doesn't really bite off huge chunks of yardage like a Crabtree or a Vernon Davis does, but when he's at his best is when he has, let's say, 11 targets, 9 catches, and he winds up with 90 yards and maybe a score. Even if he doesn't get in the end zone, if he's going to be targeted that much and they're going to have to throw the ball that much, he's going to see his targets. He usually converts on his targets. If they're anywhere close to him, he can catch the ball. So he's not really like a catch-and-run guy. He's more of a safer play that you want to play, assuming that he's going to get the targets, which will just equal receptions, and he just catch for 10 yards every other down. That's what he does. He's not what he used to be in Arizona, but he still can score. Sorry, hold on, give me 1 second. Sorry, my friends are here watching the game upstairs.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's really all I have to say about Bolden anyway.
So, I agree with you, right? He's not the same receiver he was, but he still can be a target hog in that offense, right? I think I've seen it, at least last year, there were several games where he had just incredible numbers in a game. Again, I don't think Crabtree was in those games, so he's going to have to share that. But like you said, he has such a high conversion rate. He's a very reliable red zone target. I can see him being targeted in the red zone or in that maroon zone again, and getting in that against the Philly defense that apparently loves to play in high-scoring games this year. So again, Anquan Bolden, 5,000 in DraftKings, 6,100 in FanDuel. I think he's a decent value this week. Moving on to our next wide receiver, Marcus Wheaton, Steelers receiver, going up against the Bucs. 4,200 in DraftKings this week. That is awfully low. 4,200 in DraftKings, 5,100 in FanDuel. So he is incredibly inexpensive in both leagues, in my opinion. Going up against the Bucs D that, as we saw, just got burned repeatedly by Atlanta. Pittsburgh's offense isn't Atlanta's, but Marcus Wheaton has the speed to kill that Tampa secondary right now. I like him a lot this week, especially at these prices. I mean, I don't see him, hogging Antonio Brown's targets by any means, but I do see him being able to get open deep and get targeted by Ben deep. Do you agree, Alex?
Yeah, I agree. If you heard the podcast earlier in the week when we were talking about quarterbacks, when I was specifically talking about Roethlisberger, he did throw a touchdown pass to Marcus Wheaton, but it got ruled no touchdown because Wheaton's foot stepped out of bounds as he was trying to make the catch. In my opinion, plays like that, you kind of almost, in your head, you have to count those as a touchdown. I know they don't give you points, but it's the look, it's the conversion of the play that is just basically taken off by a small rule. I mean, it's not a small rule, but it's one of those things where you saw it happen. He's looking that way. He's going to continue to look that way. You got to keep that in mind as a touchdown, even though it doesn't count on the scoreboard, because other people aren't going to look at it that way. But if you do, you see more value in somebody with a lower stat line. That said, against this Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense, instead of going up against Carolina's defense, he's going to have a lot more space to run around. Alterin Werner is going to be on Antonio Brown, and that's going to free him up with the second cornerback in Tampa Bay. He should have a big week. I personally, right now, have him in one of my lineups as a flex. I've recommended to a bunch of people to play him over certain guys, maybe like a Ruben Randall or a Greg Jennings. I just think if this is a week where Ben Roethlisberger is going to have a really, really nice day, and although Antonio Brown will probably see the lion's share of that, Marcus Wheaton is going to see a lot of that too.
Yep, I agree, and I like your point how you can't discount what happened last week because that shows that Big Ben has the confidence to at least get him in the end zone, right? So that's a great sign to look for, and I think he's going to find the end zone again, but further out.
Time out, you're like weird talking.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Is it cutting in and out?
It's like echoing in like an evil voice kind of thing.
Oh, it's the robot thing. Okay.
I got my interception from Keenan Robinson though. 8 points.
There you go, man. Nice.
It's got 21 for me already.
Jesus.
What a stud. Yeah, this league's ridiculous. Alec Ogletree had 22 points for me last week. The week that Chandler Jones had the block kick and the touchdown, he had a 60-point week. I didn't have him yet, but 60 points because he had 2 sacks, he had the block, he had the fumble recovery, he had the touchdown, he had a bunch of tackles.
That's absurd.
Like the guy who has J.J. Watt, I'm playing him this week. It's just like one of the scariest things. Like I would rather see Calvin than J.J. Watt most weeks.
All right. Moving on to our next wide receiver value. I think it's somebody that you have a bit of a man crush on now because you recommend him every week so far. I can't really hate on you for it because I see the potential in value. He is that boomer bust guy, but I haven't seen him with a boom type of week yet, and that's Kenny Stills going up against the Cowboys this week. 3,500 in DraftKings, 4,600 in FanDuel. So clearly the DFS sites don't put as much value to him as like Brandon Cooks and other Saints receivers. So tell me, what makes you like him at this price, but what makes you like him so much overall?
I like him mostly based on the matchup. This is a game where Breeze could easily go for over 400 yards, 4 touchdowns. It's one of those games that Breeze owners have been waiting from Breeze just because they're playing the Dallas defense. Stills is always a threat to hit a home run, and at that kind of price, I see if he went up and he starts to be a little bit more consistent, I don't know if I would take him as much because I view him more as a boomer bust kind of guy. So when his price is low, I feel like I like taking the risk that he could just all he needs is a 60-yard touchdown catch, and he's worth his price. And Brees has actually been targeting him a little bit more in the short passing game, more so than he was last year. I remember the first game he came back, he tossed him a screen pass on the side, and he almost made it into the end zone. I think he got tackled inside the 5. He's definitely somebody that Breeze really likes. I know that he has all the love is thrown in Brandon Cook's way, but when that hamstring is fully healthy, Kenny Stills is one of those guys that Breeze loves, and he's going to love throwing him the ball. He had 5 touchdowns last year. He loves going deep to him. At some point, he's going to break loose, and he's going to have a big day, and I want to take that chance against the Cowboys.
Interesting, because the Cowboys are surprisingly good against wide receivers, apparently, according to ESPN.com's points against stat. You know, they're one of the top 10 teams against receivers anyway. One of the worst against quarterbacks overall. So I see your point with Drew Brees and the fact that he spreads the ball out a lot more than normal quarterbacks, which is one of the things that really puts him in that elite category. I could see him throwing to his receiver 3 or 4, who is going up against a pretty poor defensive back 3 or 4. So I can see the Kenny Stills value this week. Again, that boomer bust play, and I think he's really going to carry that tag the whole season, unless we see like an injury to Brandon Cooks and maybe even Marquez Colston to provide Stills that next step up in the pecking order there.
I also think they want to get him involved sooner rather than later because then it'll open up more things for Colston. It'll open up more things for Graham. It'll open up more things for Cooks in the running game. To have
Hmm.
him become a piece this early in the season after being hurt, if they get him involved now, the offense as a whole is gonna help itself out by just having more options. Whereas if you wait until later in the year, I mean, it could work both ways because if you kind of forget about him later in the year, he could be great and he could go for 3 weeks straight where he goes for those big touchdowns. But I think it serves the offense better as a whole right now, especially because they're 1-2 if they get Stills involved now.
Yeah, I see the value. I personally won't be playing him
I will.
because I don't see it yet, but I know you will because you love him, and he did okay for you last week. You gotta say that he did okay.
Yeah, I almost won the board bet.
Almost.
You won on receptions alone.
I did. Percy had quite a few short little dink passes for me, which I liked. But alas, my virtual beer is not here yet. I'll get it sometime.
Yeah, I'll send it to you soon.
Moving on to the next value pick. Here's a guy that I I put him on here because I like him this week, going up against the Atlanta defense, who I still personally don't believe in, especially outside of the dome. They're going up to Minnesota. Greg Jennings going at 4,500 in DraftKings, 5,400 in FanDuel. He's not going to get you that, the 7 catches for 140 and a touchdown that he would have gotten you, when Favre was a quarterback. He's going to get you, I think, maybe 3 or 4 catches, but he's going to have at least one of them go deep and go for a deep score. And my reasoning behind that is because Atlanta's defense isn't going to respect the deep ball with Teddy Bridgewater in his first game, throwing the rock, right? They're going to try and make and shrink the field, and they're going to think that Norv Turner just wants to keep that field small for Bridgewater, not really open it up for him, seeing as how Rudolph's out, AP's gone still. You got to rely on Asiata. Cordero Patterson, I think they may, continue to try to get him the short stuff and let him use his speed to get open. But I think Jennings is a guy that can be sneaky fast, get past the secondary, and just be waiting there for a ball and take it to the house from Bridgewater. Alex, do you agree with me this week on this guy?
Not 100%. I can see him going deep for a touchdown, but I also feel like Cordarrelle is probably the guy that I would see getting that one touchdown over the top because I like Atlanta's defense this week. I know we had this discussion on the last podcast. Going against a rookie quarterback in his first real start up against a team that just dominated the Buccaneers last week. They have the swag going. They have that confidence. They're going to start playing. I think they're going to start playing a little bit better. I don't think they're just going to immediately go back to Atlanta defense that we've seen over the early part of the season and last year. I see Jennings' stat line more like if he does get a touchdown, it'll be one of those 4 catches, 48 yards, and a touchdown kind of things where he gets his touch in the red zone. I actually do think his value is higher now that Kyle Rudolph is out, especially in the red zone, because Kyle Rudolph is the guy that is just going to dominate the red zone when he's healthy in the game. But for the next 6 weeks now, Bridgewater gets to really build a rapport with Cordarrelle and Greg Jennings and hopefully get Jerick McKinnon in the mix. I am waiting for this kid to get in the mix. And
Everyone's waiting for that, yes.
Everyone, because Asiata is so. I just finished my article about this yesterday. Asiata has run for less than 3 yards per carry in 2 straight games. You cannot be a starting running back, especially a bell cow that they're asking him to be, and run for less than 3 yards per carry. It's just with him still being the starter, I don't trust that offense because you don't really have to stack the box against a guy like that because you're never worried about him breaking a big run, and you can really play the pass more, and that's going to be tough for Teddy Bridgewater's first start. So I'm kind of steering clear away from Jennings this week, but I can see where you see the value because of that defense. But I just see it as a week where Atlanta's defense does almost what they did against the Buccaneers.
Board bet, Stills versus Jennings?
That's not fair, though. Jennings is... Jennings is way more expensive. What's the price differential
Yeah, Jennings
on
is
that
more
one?
expensive. I mean, that doesn't mean
Do
anything,
I
though.
do I get like a 2 catch like handicap? Do I get a little handicap on this one?
No,
I gave up like $2,000 last week. I gotta get
no,
something in return for this. All
no.
right, fine. We'll do Stills versus Jennings. I don't care. I'm taking Stills every week.
He's gonna win one of these weeks.
He's gonna get it one of
All
these
right.
weeks.
All right. Moving on to the next guy, I saw a little bit of value in. All he's done is score. I think every week, or at least the past 2 weeks, he's top 20 in the league in receptions. DeAndre Hopkins going up against the Bills. Now, the Bills have been a sneaky good defense so far, but DeAndre Hopkins has been the receiver to own on the Texans this year. He's going for 4,800 in DraftKings, 6,400 in FanDuel. At home, I like him because I think he's somehow got a rapport with Fitzpatrick. He has that really quick speed, right? He's got Andre Johnson on the other side, so obviously he's got a stud on the other side to take attention away. If Varian Foster plays this week, he's got a solid running back to keep the linebackers in. DeAndre Hopkins, like I said, sneaky fast, very quick, can catch the ball on a screen and take it to the house, much like Cordero Patterson, but they're just not using him, in the same rushing capacity. Do you like him this week, Alex, or am I alone on this guy too?
I don't really know what to think about Hopkins. I was thinking that might find a little bit of information in kind of the splits between when Foster played and when he didn't play last week. But what I found was in those 2 games where Foster was playing, he had the 2 touchdowns. He had a touchdown in each game, although the first one I kind of feel was a little fluky. But last week he was heavily targeted. He had 9 targets. I think he had 6 catches, and he had 116 yards. So without Foster in the lineup, I feel like his his floor and ceiling for yardage is much higher. But with Foster in there, he kind of has a better chance of getting a touchdown because if Foster doesn't get it in the end zone at first, we know the story with Andre Johnson. For some reason, the man just can't get touchdowns in the red zone. He's the unluckiest man in the red zone. And Fitzpatrick seems to really like Hopkins. So he's one of those. I just don't know. At his price at 48 against the Bills, that seem to me like they have a very good secondary. They have a very good defense. They're one of these teams on the rise. But if that defense can get to if Houston's defense can get to EJ Manuel, I think that Hopkins has a bigger game. But if by some stretch of the imagination Buffalo's offense is able to succeed, then it's going to keep them off the field more, and it's going to allow a lot less chances for Hopkins because they're going to force feed the ball to Foster. So if you don't believe in the Bills, play Hopkins. If you do believe in the Bills and that they're real, do not play Hopkins.
Yeah, I mean, I think I like him a bit more in DraftKings this week than FanDuel. Again, 4,800 in DraftKings, 6,400 in FanDuel. I think he can be a sneaky play, that boomer bust play that we always talk about. But again, if you're looking for someone safe, he's definitely not your guy. Moving on to someone who I think is a bit safer this week. You identified him in DraftKings as a value at 6,400. Randall Cobb of the Packers going up against the Bears this week. Tell me, Alex, why did you point him out this week? Why do you like him?
That secondary got I don't want to call it abused, but they got hurt big time against the Jets last week. They are struggling big time with. I don't even know if they have enough guys to start and field a real team in the secondary at this point. They lost Mundy, they lost Conti, they've already lost Tillman. They're struggling back there. I know they played well down the stretch against the Jets, but that's because Geno just looked terrible. As much as I hate saying that right now, he looked horrible on Monday night. That's not going to be the same case with Rodgers. Rodgers knows the secondary. He's played against it plenty of times. And with them struggling to put their best guys on the field, I just see Jordy and Randall Cobb taking full advantage of that. And Cobb is the big value because he's a wide receiver 1 at a wide receiver 2, low-end wide receiver 2 price on DraftKings.
Yeah, and again, can't discount the full point PPR. Randall Cobb plays from all the Packers receivers play from all over the field, and he's been getting some great target numbers this year. I definitely expect that to continue. And if they can get the run game going, which hopefully they can this week, we talked about it on Tuesday. With Lacey going up against one of the worst run Ds in the league right now, just watch for the play action and watch for Cobb to get in behind the linebackers and take something right up the middle of the field. Definitely big play potential there, as well as small play potential where you're relying on the PPR. So 6,400, not a bad price at all for him this week in DraftKings. Our last value play of the week. I think it hurts you to say this, Alex. Anybody going up against the Jets? I think we've identified one person each week going up against the Jets as a potential value.
I didn't hear one word of that last part. You just cut out completely. I didn't know when you were talking, so I didn't want to jump in and while you were getting a good point.
No problem. Definitely jump in whenever you can. That's fine. All right, let's reset then. So our last wide receiver of the night, Golden Tate, going up against the Jets. I know it might hurt you to talk about seeing value in people going up against your team, Alex, but 4,700 in DraftKings, 5,500 in FanDuel. I personally feel like the Jets are going to focus on Calvin, and they have every right to. And I think that leaves Tate available for a big play potentially. He's getting a lot more targets than I thought he would so far in the season. So tell me, Alex, do you like Golden Tate as well?
Sorry, I just missed my connection, and I just got right back in, so I've missed that whole thing that we've been talking about. But Golden Tate against the Jets, I love it.
All right, go ahead and talk about him then.
All right, so
I was
with Calvin being in the lineup for Detroit, that means that the only decent cornerback that we have that is actually healthy, and Antonio Allen, who is also a converted safety, I might add, is going to be probably matched up against Calvin Johnson with help over the top from either DeJuan Landry or Calvin Pryor, which leaves Golden Tate on probably an island with either Kyle Wilson, who has proved time and time again that he just doesn't have what it takes to be an outside corner, and Darren Walls, who he didn't look terrible last week against Alshon. I'm pretty sure that Alshon was the offender in the pass interference that allowed the Bears to score their first touchdown last week. But he's still not a superstar. He's still not an outside starting corner. He's somebody that I'm worried about going up against the Golden Tate, who's going to catch balls over the middle, and he's just too quick. If Rex decides to have Demario Davis or David Harris try to cover Golden Tate, I'm going to pull my hair out because I can just see him running right by them, and then Golden Tate's going to catch the ball, and he's going to have plenty of space to run. Our secondary is a mess. He's too good not to do well against our defense, because if by some stretch of the imagination we're able to shut Calvin down, it's because we have three guys on him, and that's going to leave plenty of space open for Golden Tate, and it's going to leave plenty of space for Bush and Bell to catch swing passes. I don't think Bush and Bell are going to have a good day running the ball. Nobody runs on us. But throwing the ball and through the air and getting extra yards from that way, yeah, they could have decent days. I wouldn't recommend starting either of them or playing them this week in DraftKings or FanDuel, just because they're going to be completely reliant on catching the ball. But Golden Tate, in my opinion, is the safest of the players on the Lions to play this week, just because he's not going to deal with the majority of the coverage, and Rex really likes to take out that number one receiver as much as he can.
So there you have it. Our wide receiver value picks, going top to bottom. I'll list them off real quick. Alshon Jeffrey of the Bears, Justin Hunter and Nate Washington of the Titans, Anquan Bolden of the Niners, Marcus Wheaton of the Steelers, Kenny Stills from the Saints, Greg Jennings from the Vikings, DeAndre Hopkins from the Texans, Randall Cobb from the Packers, Golden Tate from the Lions. If you have a question or a comment, feel free to reach out to us on Twitter or come find us on fantasyknuckleheads.com. For Alex, I'm Mark. Pete, if you're listening to this, we missed you, buddy. Take care, everyone. We will catch you next time.